It all began 135 years ago in 1883 in Papenburg when your great grandfather, it should be switched on, I think. Yes. When your great grandfather started a shipbroking and agency business, Schulte and Bruns. In 1900, the first owned vessels were ordered. In 1955, your father, Consul Bernhard Schulte, separated from Schulte and Bruns and started his own company, Reederei Bernhard Schulte, by taking over 4 small vessels. While Schulte and Brun later filed for insolvency, the Bernhard Schulte Group grew into one of the largest private ship-owning groups globally. The very large expansion of the Bernhard Schulte Group started after one of the major shipping crises in the 1980s. Today, the Bernhard Schulte Group owns a diversified fleet of 90 vessels, manages around 600 ships for third-party owners, employs 20,000 seafarers and 3,000 staff ashore. It's a truly diversified maritime group, from ship management, crewing, catering, procurement, software development, supervision and consultancy, hull cleaning, venture capital, and software development. Who would have known that one of the subsidiaries, Mary Apps, alone employs 700 programmers in India? The Bernhard Schulte Group is therefore one of the world's most recognized and largest private shipping companies, still 100% owned by the Schulte family. The company's management today is led by your 2 sons, Johann and Christoph, and Ian Beveridge, while you're heading up the advisory board. The Bernhard Schulte Group has weathered past and recent crises much better than many of the other German shipping companies. Such remarkable performance does not come by luck, but it must find its foundation in an exceptional leadership. It is therefore truly a privilege for all of us here today to be able to learn from you, Heinrich, what distinguishes a successful ship owner from the least fortunate ones, what lessons you have learned, and what you believe your 2 sons will face as challenges as the 5th generation leading the company in the future. I can also say that within the German shipping community, your company, but also you personally, are standing out from the rest as a truly remarkable personality, successful, thoughtful, humble, and of truly high integrity. You are a true bearer of, or true ehrbarer Kaufmann, as we call it here in Hamburg, basically an honorary Hanseatic merchant. And I'm also very happy that you brought your wife Astrid along, with whom you together have 7 children. Now, to start the interview, when you enter the Schulte Group headquarters here in Hamburg, you're greeted by a crane the bird. And under the crane it reads, and I say it first in German, then I translate it, der Kranich hält den Stein, des Schlafs sich zu erwehren. Wer sich dem Schlaf ergibt, kommt nie zu Ruhm und Ehren. So freely translated, it means the crane is holding the stone to stop it from falling asleep, as those who fall asleep will never succeed. So Heinrich, is this the ethos of your company? You have to hold the microphone too.
It is a special story referring to the crane. It used to be on the roof of a Hamburgian merchant, but the building was bombed, completely bombed. But the crane survived. It was unhurt. And we bought it for very low money and took it into our lobby because we fully believe in the sentence that was cited by Christoph.
It's also good to know that it survived, meaning that it gives you resilience as a company going forward.
Okay.
when you started almost 60 years ago in 1963, what were the first important lessons you learned in the first few days? You described it to me in our meeting on Monday. What was the first lessons you took away when you joined your father's company?
Well, I quickly learned that shipping is a very volatile business. Yeah. Well, you mean the principles that one can learn from joining a shipping company? Okay. If that is the case, I would say that what I learned there was that independence is probably the best basis for a shipping man. Independence in the sense that you have to realize that your independence is dearly bought. You have to master a way, a course that allows you to make money and at the same time build a business that is respected in the shipping world. Not an easy maneuver.
Yeah. Your father once said that young people should be thrown into the lake so they learn how to swim. Is this what you do with your two sons?
Well, not an easy question. I would say yes, I did. And learning by doing still is the best mode of teaching. There's no doubt about that. Yes, I threw them into the pond also.
And they're still swimming.
Yeah, and they are swimming, yes.
Looking back over your long history in shipping, what was the most successful period for the business, and what were the most important correct decisions you took at certain stages throughout the career and the last 60 years of the Schulte Group?
That's a difficult question, that one. Well, I would say the 60s were a period with ups and downs, but a period where you could make money in shipping. In the 70s, you could not, perhaps with the exception of certain segments in shipping. The 80s, the majority of the auditory will know by their own experience. Again, an extremely difficult period because between 1981 and 1987, we had to master the first shipping crisis, where in particular many of the German shipping companies folded. And the 90s, yeah, how shall I say, the 90s were a period where we in Bernhard Schulte, due to the volatility we had experienced in shipping, decided to expand into companies that were related to maritime affairs, but were not strictly ship owning. And when we entered the present period, I don't have to tell you that after 2008, we had to master the most difficult shipping crisis we ever encountered. we were greatly helped by these ancillary companies that we founded in the meantime. We started off with ship management. You have mentioned a few of the areas where we actually got active. And that allowed us to scramble out of the 12-year shipping crisis following the breakdown of Lehman. With, I wouldn't say unscathed, but our balance sheet was such that we could survive and that we still got credit from the banks. Not the European, I must say, but they had for a long time given up. But we had early enough shifted our financial department to Singapore. And it was much easier to talk to Japanese and Chinese and Korean banks rather than to German or European banks. And the Asian bankers very quickly realized that there was a lucrative possibility to invade markets that were given up by the local banks for a long time. Well, that's basically what I have to say to you.
Yeah, basically the diversification away from just ship owning to more diversified cash flow. And today, as I described in the opening remarks, it is astonishing when you look at the website of the Schulte Group about all the companies that are listed. And even you admitted you couldn't remember all the names of the subsidiaries that you had on a global basis.
But that may be due to my age, you know.
I think it's more down to the number of companies. Now, shipping is, as you described, when you started with working with your father, and you described that in the early days when you were in the chartering department, some bankers were just coming straight into the office of your father and wanting to know revenue every single week, what was happening, and that you decided you wanted to make sure that over the years you try to keep the reach of the banker at bay in terms of what your business was going through. But at the same time, in the 1980s, as well as in obviously in the 2000s, but maybe also in the 1980s, and having gone through your company's history a bit, was a very, very difficult time that also you had to survive, and you didn't only survive it because of maybe diversified cash flow, but also because of the reputation and the connection you had in the banking industry.
Yeah. Well, sometimes there's only simple answers available to a question. I would say that what saved us over the decades really was our belief to be and to remain conservative in this very volatile business. And that meant that we were never the fastest in expansion. We took it step by step, and that refers to the fleet as well as to the ancillary companies. It's something that you really have to think about honestly. Do you want to be? I'm now exaggerating. Do you really want to be a player in shipping, or do you want to be somebody who will survive and gradually come to a certain amount of importance in this very expensive field. And we decided for the conservative way. So we were never very sparkling.
Well, I would say that your group today is rather sparkling with all the activities, but you're referring to the ship owning side, which is, I think we all have learned the lessons that less leverage is quite often the surviving factor. Looking back at your career in shipping, is there anything that you regret you did? Either purchasing a certain vessel or venturing into something where you say, this was a big mistake, I shouldn't have done this?
Many mistakes. Many mistakes in the sense that we missed chances here and there. But I would say I made a very daring mistake. That was in 2008, actually, the Lehman year, where we had a rather big new building bunch of vessels to be paid for. But with the optimism that prevailed in those days, many of you will remember, we thought we could take it easily. We secured a charter for these, it were container vessels actually, for these container vessels, but we thought with the finance we could wait because the terms offered at the time we didn't find very attractive. So Lehman came and the sudden downfall of all markets. And we had about, let me see, 600 million to finance. And there was no bank in Europe that we had ties with, established ties in the past, that was willing to touch any of these ships despite a pretty good charter. So we turned to Asia. That was the beginning of our policy change into Asia. And we finally obtained the finance at reasonable terms. But it was a few months where I really shivered a little bit, which didn't happen too many times to me.
So in those times, did you make decisions very much by yourself? You know, it's obviously times of tremendous pressure, responsibility towards a company, towards a heritage. Did you consult with your wider management team? Did you consult with your wife? How did you come in these moments of loneliness sometimes as well, maybe, in terms of having to make a decision? How did you deal with the pressure?
I've really never been a friend of lone decisions. Yes, you're right. I talked to my wife, particularly on personal matters. No, don't get me wrong. I mean on matters who to attach to the company, leading positions. And I must say that the gut feeling of my wife many times was better than mine. So I carry on asking her. But otherwise, I must say that I'm a friend of discussing matters. And we are sitting together once in a week, the leading people of the holding company, and we exchange views and we form a pad of paper with pros and cons. And surely there is sometimes pretty hefty discussions. but we come quickly, and this is the point, quickly to a solution. And I personally feel much better when I have solid assistance from my leading people.
When you look forward now, what do you believe is the most important advice you can give to your two sons to make sure there is a sixth generation to take over the company?
Oh, my dear Christoph, there's so many advices I would like to give. um, yes, let me start with a very simple remark. I'm absolutely convinced shipping will remain with us in one form or the other. It has been with us for more than 5,000 years. And there's no cheaper way of exchanging goods than via the oceans. And that will remain. Within that, or based on that argument, yeah, there's many advices possible, and I think if you act in shipping, you can make money if you act anti-cyclical. There's not much difference to the farmer who grows pigs, but it needs one thing. You have to set aside certain amounts of funds that you can act anti-cyclical, because you can only make your positive acquisitions and decisions if you have cash at hand. And the bank will not be willing to give you credit, because they say in these bad times we don't give you money, my friend. So that is number one. If you want to be successful in shipping, of course, there's so many other things. Don't overload yourself,
Yeah.
etc. pp. I could carry on and mention at least 10 points.
You mentioned also to me that basically you've told your sons to stay private, meaning, you know, also to be able to make quick decisions, because we all know that shipping is so volatile. In many cases, one has to make very quick decisions. So,
Yes. And I think this is the only real advantage we have over big concerns. We are dealing in various joint ventures with big concerns. My people complain continuously because dealing with these big guys is really tough work, sometimes superfluous works. And the most difficult problem in this context is you don't get decisions in time. They have to talk to their superiors, they have to talk to the top management, they have to talk to the Aufsichtsrat, to a board. It takes months. The chance is gone. So there may be quite rich partners, potential partners around, but beware of thieves. I mean, it could be a very difficult marriage.
we have a room where many are able to enjoy a good container market, very strong earnings, and also ourselves, we constantly have to think what's next, what to invest into. What would you as a group now look to invest into? What is it, a ship? Is it another service business? Where would you put your money today?
Well, this is the most difficult question you have posed. My answer is I simply don't know at the moment. And in fact, our investment activity at the present moment and in the months of 2022 have been very low, at a very low activity. There's so many unknown factors that we still do not have a final judgment on. And so we simply live on the fruits that we have grown in the past. Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't answer your question at the moment. We have no new building program. Nothing. We are buying a few second-hand ships in order not to be completely inactive, but that's all.
Yeah. I recall also once Klaus Budelmann said to me after the boom in 2008, and I spoke to him in 2010, and he said sometimes the most difficult part for ship owner is to sit on his hands.
To sit on?
His hands, not do anything. Wait. But obviously, at the same time, sitting on cash right now with an inflation as we have it makes it more difficult to sit on that cash.
I do agree. This is the problem. And we have a rift within the company, in the management, top management. I openly tell you about it. I'm the only one who is afraid that this inflationary tendency in the world will not stop soon. It will expand further, and it will be extremely difficult to catch up with it and particularly bring it down. Whereas my younger people all believe that the central banks of this world have enough power to control inflation. By the records of the central banks over the last years, I have my doubts. But anyway, this is the situation with Heinrich Schulte.
Many thanks for taking the time to join this conference. It's one of the main conferences here in Hamburg, and it's a true honor to have you as what is a real captain of the industry to be here to talk to us, and that also you act as a role model for many younger aspiring ship owners in Hamburg, but also obviously a role model for your own family to hand over to a sixth generation when they're having reached your age. Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Dr. Schulte.